Welcome to Endless, a Sandman podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm writer, erstwhile DC Comics editor, and American dreamer driving down the road of true knowledge, Alisa Whitney.
And I'm story expert who does not murder for profit, Lani Diane Rich. Today on Endless, we're going to be talking about Lost Hearts, episode 10 from Netflix's The Sandman, season 1.
Lost Hearts was written by Vanessa Benton and directed by Louise Hooper.
I brought you into this world to serve humanity, not to feed upon it. Time to wake up.
Lost Hearts begins in a hotel room where the Corinthian convinces Rose that she and Jed are safer staying put. If she leaves, Dream's Raven can find her. Whenever she falls asleep in dreams, Morpheus can find her. And he does not intend to help her, the Corinthian reveals. She can have both room keys and decide whether to let the Marquis serial killer back inside. What could possibly go wrong? Then the Corinthian goes off to give his speech to the adoring crowd of serial killers. Stuck on your own, doing your best in a solitary profession without any recognition? Well, the Corinthian sees you and admires you. But somewhere in his speech, the sexy nightmare puts his audience under, and as they dream their idiosyncratic dreams of mayhem, the Dream King himself appears in the room. "You disappoint me, Corinthian," he says. "You are my masterpiece, a dark mirror made to reflect everything humanity will not confront." "Nailed it," the Corinthian claims. But Morpheus sees the Corinthian as infecting others with your joy of death and just something else for people to be afraid of. But when Morpheus raises his hand to unmake the Corinthian, the nightmare raises his knife and threatens his maker. A knife against a dream? You don't think a dream can die? Shockingly, the knife cuts Dream's hand. How is this possible? Rose is dreaming and tearing down the walls between dreams, which means that she is now caught in a maze of serial killers' sadistic fantasies. As she and Jed stand caught between serial killers, the Corinthian calls out, "I'm trying to keep you alive here," and the Sandman counters with, "I'm trying to keep your world alive." But Rose is choosing her own path. She puts the walls back and wakes herself, leaving the Corinthian and Dream to confront each other. "Do you know why I do it?" asks the nightmare. "To taste what it is to be human." He accuses Dream of not caring about humans, only about his rules. "I contain the entire collective unconscious," Dream responds. "Without rules, it would consume me." As he unmakes his nightmare, the Corinthian has one final barb. "I'm only sorry I won't be around to see Rose do the same to you." Picking up the only remnant of the nightmare, a tiny, tooth-eyed skull, Dream regards him with Hamlet-like regret. "Next time I make you, you will not be so flawed and petty, little Dream." Then the Dream King curses the audience with self-awareness of their selfishness and cowardice, of their cruelty and monstrousness, and sends them off to turn themselves in, or to kill themselves, or to live in torment. Rose and Jed drive off into the night only to receive a call from Lyda. She is in labor, and Hal, Zelda, and Chantal, and Barbie and Ken are all taking her to the hospital. Joining her friends, Rose feels hopeful about her future and her ability to fight the Dream King. But once she is asleep, her dream pulls in all her friends. Barbie, dressed as a princess in an epic fantasy with a talking beast named Martin Tenbones. Ken, cheating with a sexy nurse. Chantal and Zelda, rescuing each other with gothic tales. And even Jed, back to his fantasy of being a superhero Sandman. Then Rose's dream becomes a whirlwind that sucks down all her friends. In a barren, blasted dreamscape, Rose is left with Dream, who tells her that she must sacrifice herself to save her friends, her brother, and her world. Death might not be so bad, though. Like any who die in the dreaming, she is welcome to remain there. But she is not alone in dreaming influential dreams. Unity, her great-grandmother, dreams herself into Lucien's library, where she seeks to know the life she might have lived had she not slept most of her years away. As Dream prepares to kill Rose, Gilbert arrives. "You were the best thing about being human," says Gilbert. "After your death, if you do stay in the dreaming, then visit me. Walk in my meadows and my green glades. rest beneath my trees. Unable to save Rose, he gives her the gift of a possible reason for her existence. Perhaps the vortex is a symbol of how humanity is the center and root of the dreaming, and a reminder that the dreaming exists to serve humanity. Then he returns to his dream state as Fiddler's Green, a sylvan oasis of green and growing things. Just as Morpheus seems about to kill Rose, Unity interrupts. She should have been the vortex had she not gone into a coma. She reveals that the father of her child had golden eyes, tipping us off that she was tupped by one of the Endless with some questionable consent. Then she sasses Morpheus and tells Rose to reach inside herself and give whatever it is that makes her the vortex. It's the dreaming, she reminds her granddaughter, and anything is possible. Rose puts her hand inside her chest and removes a crystal heart. Unity takes the heart, and now she is the vortex. In her room in the waking world, the old Unity dies and wakes inside the dreaming. Now Rose is free to go and resume her life. Back with her friends, Rose and Jed move back to New York with Hal accompanying them. He will sell his house to Zelda and Chantal. Barbie and Ken seem destined for a breakup, but Lyda, happy with her infant son, seems ready to move on. Some months later, Rose writes a book and sends it off to be submitted to a publisher, and it appears in Lucien's library. Less happily, Dream and Desire also have a reunion of sorts. Dream walks through a gallery and picks up a crystal heart, Desire's sigil, which we have seen before in the scene where Rose pulls it out of her chest. Morpheus walks into his sister-brother's realm and confronts them. Desire impregnated Unity all those decades ago, which meant that this was a long con, and if Dream had been forced to kill Rose, he would have killed a family member, which is one of the constraints which binds the Endless. Desire, catsuit tail lashing about, is not chastened. Back in the dreaming, Morpheus is busy creating new dreams and nightmares, including a brand new version of Gault, butterfly-winged, a dark and glorious beauty of a dream. He has learned to allow his projects to direct him, it seems. Morpheus is not ready to reinvent his Corinthian, however. He hands over the skull to Lucien's keeping, also entrusting her to run things as he focuses on his newest nightmare, Broken-Faced Crockery Man. But Morpheus will not have long to work on his new creation. Politics in hell is forcing Lucifer's hand, and the Lightbringer will have to appease the expansionist high-ranking demons chafing to expand hell. That's all right. The platinum blonde, red silk dressing gowned fallen angel has a plan that will offend God and bring Morpheus to his knees.
All right, Alisa, I have to say, every week your summaries, whenever you do them, always delight me. But Broken-Faced Crockery Man is like one of my favorite things ever, and I'm very excited to hopefully see that character come to life someday. Here we are talking about the kind of finale. We sort of have a coda for next week with the Dream of a Thousand Cats and Calliope, but this is the end of these storylines at this point. And I have to say, like, my first impression the first time I watched this episode, I was just like, oh my God, I love it. I love it. Because there's lots to love here. From a story structure perspective, like, all of the different storylines, everything that's going on. I mean, we have this like major, line of conflict with the Corinthian that's resolved in like the first 5 minutes of the episode. And then we spend the rest of the time just kind of like sewing up all of these different stories that we've got like running all over the place. And it just feels like 5 stories in a trench coat, all of them like fighting to see who's getting the attention now. But, I mean, like, the thing is, it doesn't mean it's not good or well done. I honestly have no idea if I had been in charge of these stories and had to remain faithful, if not to the letter, to the spirit of everything that was going on in the comics, which I think that they did. I think that it's just one of those things where, like, all right, fine, it's got to be like putting socks on an octopus. It's just that's the way it's going to be, right?
My God, so, like, you're so brilliant.
And that's fine. That's fine. Like, it was still like, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's interesting. And unless I know how I would have fixed it given that challenge, I just need to shut up. What was your overall response about it?
First of all, I really enjoyed it. I think managed to not only wrap up the character arcs, but it wrapped up the philosophical questions that were raised. And I don't think it could have been done any better in this amount of real estate. That is to say, sometimes you walk into somebody's apartment in New York City and you think, wow, this is the most efficient and lovely use of space. Look, they've got a floating shelf giving some more illusion of space. They put a loft bed in. I can't believe that lamp does double duty as a coat stand, whatever, coat rack, so everything has been cunningly Murphy bedded and, Russian dolled into what are those really called? Matryoshka dolls? Anyway.
Matryoshka dolls,
Matryoshka dolls. It's been matryoshka'd brilliantly.
I think that's it, yeah.
Those are those Russian dolls where one little wooden doll nests inside of another and another.
Endlessly, yes. Mm-hmm.
But the only thing that I think could have, added to my pleasure is giving it a little more time to breathe, because there were so many plot strands, as you said, so many character arcs, that it felt wonderfully fast paced, but also it made me a little nostalgic for the days when people meandered. And this is sort of a little off topic, but I was thinking, I know our attention spans have gotten shorter because I've been rereading some older books. And, in older romances, not only do the hero and heroine, or, back then it was always the hero and heroine, they didn't meet each other in the first page or the first chapter. People were going off and living their convoluted lives, having sex with other people and doing all kinds of things. And then eventually they met, and it wasn't as tight. And so you lost that tightness. But what you got was a little bit more of the sense of this is like life. And you couldn't always see how everything was going to click into place. So I don't argue with this for being what it is, a creature of 2022, when everyone has the attention span of a gnat. And, but there are so many things that you could have added just a little bit of water to and had dinners for weeks.
Well, with a little more real estate, they might have been able to kind of let things breathe a little bit more. That said, it's my strong conviction that you can tell your story walking and still have space to get in that feel of here is life. But like, your story needs to be moving. So for me, myself personally, while I appreciate the old way things were done, where we just meandered around and then finally about page 50 got started, I like when a story hits the ground running. I like when a story happens and knows what it's doing and pursues that thing. And it can, while in pursuit of that thing. And having come from a comics background, as you do, like, you understand better than anybody the Murphy bed of storytelling that is comics, right?
Yes.
That there is so much, nothing does just one job, and that is such a beautiful efficiency that speaks to my particular, like, story heart. So that said, like, all of that said, yes, it's 10 cats in a trench coat. Yes, there's a lot of things going on. But every little individual thing, like, I really enjoyed. Like, I enjoyed the ending of the Corinthian story. I love the little tiny, how many people are 3D printing that little tiny toothy eyeball skull right now so it can sit on their desk? Like, that is a merchandising opportunity. Hopefully somebody's already on that and is producing them so you can buy them. I will absolutely get one for my desk. But yeah, it's so much happening. And sometimes I think, okay, well, let's talk about this, but then there's this, but then there's that. Let's go ahead and start as we usually. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just suddenly thought that a really great marketing thing would be Corinthian cereal. Each little nugget, like Captain Crunch, would be a little skull with
one
two
of those little skulls.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Get it? Because cereal.
Get on that. The cereal. No, I get it. I think that would be wonderful. I love that idea. That's brilliant. All right, so let's start, as we often do, with the visuals from this episode, which I think are pretty stunning.
Yes, I mean there's a lot of beautiful stuff and a lot of just nice framing of shots. I noticed that when we visit Unity, we are seeing her initially through one of the windows in that dollhouse of hers, and I just thought that was lovely, and it may not have been subtle, but I don't need subtle. It was beautifully done. And obviously the CGI of, in general, I feel that CGI I like as a garnish rather than as a main course. But, the Fiddler's Green, turning from person into place, that is one place where, you can give me all the parsley. I like it.
Oh my God, I absolutely loved that. Galt also, like the design of Galt is one of my favorite things. I absolutely love everything about this character. And then to see Galt with that, I mean, the beautiful effects they did on her skin and her hair and the fairy wings that they gave her as she, was a floating universe flying into the sky. It was so incredibly beautiful. And, Gilbert turning into Fiddler's Green with all of the green and the flowers and the florals. And, usually when you see someone like disintegrate piece by piece, it is part of the horror, but here it is this beautiful kind of re-becoming, right? Like he had to leave himself for a while in order to understand himself and then was able to become himself again, and there's something about that again, we didn't have a whole lot of time for Gilbert and Fiddler's Green. But what time we had, I think, was really beautifully spent. And I absolutely loved just the way that his becoming was visualized. It was so beautiful.
And, I think symbolically, the fact that Galt, who's our new character, becomes good, becomes a dream without losing any aspect of her gorgeous blackness and her universeness. Her design is really not that different. So just like it's kind of that by awarding her wings, I don't think he so much recreated her as he gave her wings, which reminds me of the Thumbelina story, where at the end, doesn't she get wings so she can become a flower fairy like the other flower fairies?
Yeah, I think so. The thing that's beautiful about that, and that I really love, is that I think she was always good.
Yes,
she was always good, but she was trapped in a nightmare existence, right?
Well, that she evolved. She may not have always been good. I think that, like Gregory the Gargoyle, she started out as a nightmare, and then she evolved. And I think the thing I would posit that he didn't remake her in some different form. Unlike the Corinthian, he really brought her back and then gifted her the wings as an acknowledgement, rather than
and to now let her be fully herself.
Yeah. So and I think that there's a lot of writing metaphors in so much of Neil's writing, but this idea of letting your characters evolve from that first conception you had of them and not forcing them to stay in the box that you initially thought they should be in, that feels very real. He, Morpheus is learning how to be a more organic writer of his creations.
Absolutely. I love that. And I hadn't really thought about it until just now. So as I say this, please understand, I have not thought this out at all, but it feels to me like there may be something of a trans narrative in there as well, in that who someone really is, and trying to find a place where they can express who they really are and then becoming again. And it does feel like we have Gilbert becoming or re-becoming, we have Galt becoming, right? We have Corinthian becoming dust, which is what he needs to be for now, there's a lot of that, this kind of transitional, expression of who people are, that I think is really interesting. Unity becoming, the vortex for a hot second and then dying, right? Rose unbecoming the vortex and becoming like a regular person and a writer, right? So we see like so much of this realization and understanding of self, so that this is really like the becoming narrative. Here we have, though, like, not to take a metaphor.
Before you go, I wanted to say, I was thinking about how some people talk about creation of the kind that Rodin as a sculptor did as seeing the shape that the stone wants to be, releasing that shape rather than imposing it. And so I think you're right that everybody kind of gets released into their truer form. So sorry, I love that.
Into their true form.
Yeah. Sorry. Go. Yeah. Back to what you were saying.
I'm following my script so tightly that I sometimes just ramble on and don't leave space for you to speak. I'm going to work on that.
Well, no. It's just sometimes you spark thoughts for me that I have not had in the, it's when we're dancing.
Yes,
it's different in the reality. But you pointed out, you started to go through. I mean, this is like those moments if we were sports announcers where you're like, all right, Lani, that was an incredible. Let's talk about the number of different plot threads that were tied up there.
Interesting strategy. Let's see how that works out for him, Cotton. It's a deep cut dodgeball reference for anybody out there who is unaware. But yeah, what I was going to hop to was this trench coat narrative and trying to find a way of not being gross when I say let's open the trench coat and take a look at all of these stories that are inside. So we come off of last week's cliffhanger with the Corinthian fighting against Dream to stay alive. Then it's Rose and Jed rushing to the hospital with Lyta. Lyta's baby being born, everybody being there. Then Dream needs to kill Rose. Then it's Gilbert offering himself to save Rose, but instead becoming Fiddler's Green.
Can you read this completely like a newscaster? I think you just need to say this like Howard Cosell.
Like a newscaster.
Yeah, no, you've done it. Like, just can you? I want to hear it as Howard Cosell.
Do you want me to? I don't know if I could do newscaster voice. I
totally
mean, I can sometimes.
Just kind of go New York, go faster. It's this and that. Just yeah.
All right. Then it's Gilbert offering himself to save Rose, but instead re-becoming Fiddler's Green. Then it's Unity Kincaid sacrificing herself to save Rose. Then it's Dream confronting Desire. Then it's Dream completing his character arc and making Galt a dream. Then it's the Lucifer coda. It's a lot. It's like putting socks on an octopus, like I said. But overall, so how was that for my my broadcaster voice?
Great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Jack, don't even try to edit all that. Just leave the mess in. It's fine. People want to see what it's like behind the scenes. That's what it's like. It's like, do a newscaster voice. Okay. But I think overall, getting back to the story, getting back to the trench coat, is that we've got all of these things happening. We've got all of this, story, wrap up, all of these things. And then it's good. I'm enjoying everything. But in a moment, I'm like, oh my God, we're popping to hell for Lucifer after we've gone and threatened Destiny. And it's just, there's so much stuff going on. But I think that the first thing that I really want to talk about, especially because like having knowledge of all of this stuff, here we have this moment where Dream is realizing that Rose is the progeny of Desire. And he turns to Rose and he says, you and your brother are the children of the endless. You've suffered enough. Now, here is this moment in which, like, clearly there is a huge significance to the fact that Desire is actually Rose's, like, great-grandfather, It's a big deal. I don't entirely understand like why it's a big deal. I know in the comics when we talked about this, there was this thing that like if Dream had killed like one of the Endless family, that there would be repercussions for that. But I was never quite sure what that was about.
Okay, so it has to do with Greek mythology, that this is what the Furies get you for. This is what, this is what screwed Oedipus up. I mean, there were so many things, but it's
a lot of things.
It's the spilling of family blood. It's that taboo that will, I believe, sick the Furies on you. This is not something I've looked up in a long while. That is my memory of that Neil grafted this ancient Greek mythology, or not grafted so much, but, incorporated it into his universe. Here is a place where I do like messiness. I was thinking about the fact that in the original, Morpheus looks like he's about to destroy Rose with a kiss. which is even kind of weirder when we realize that he's about, at that point, he doesn't know. So he's about to give a romantic kiss to someone who's a great-great-grandniece or something.
Great niece or something like that?
Yeah. Although, God, in some cultures, that's still viable bride. But and I, when I say some cultures, I'm going to reveal that my grandfather's parents were first cousins. I think there was a lot of inbreeding, which explains the level of nearsightedness in my family, among other things. But anyway, and I liked the messiness of this. I was thinking about the whole weird Luke Leia kiss,
right?
That is clearly romantic. And then they kind of try and veer a different way.
And then they retcon it. Yes.
But I like some of that weird, uncomfortable mess. Back to the Future, which is, I think, a truly brilliant piece of writing, is fueled by incest anxiety. It is so, if nobody talks about how racy it is. Throughout, what's the kid's name? Is it Marty? Or he's
Marty
not
McFly.
So Marty McFly goes back in time and his teenage mother clearly thinks he's hotter than his dad. And the discomfort and squirminess of that gives you a lot of mileage. So this is, I think, a little... For me, I like a squirmy cringe, and I kind of miss having lost it.
I don't know how to respond to that. But let's keep going.
All
right. So one of the things, though, that I liked a lot is that we have Rose, in this dream actually pulling Desire's sigil, that crystal heart, from her chest, handing it to Unity. Unity takes it in, then she's dead. Now she's hanging out in the dreaming, right? And then we see it's the golden eyes thing, though, that catches Dream's attention. Not the fact that it's actually Desire's sigil inside of Rose, but that the man that Unity had this baby with in her dreams was golden-eyed, right?
Hey, you put your sigil in my vortex.
God, this episode of Endless is just getting dirty. We may need an age.
I was thinking of Reese's peanut butter cup, but okay.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Sigil and vortex. I just went right there. But anyway, so we have all of the dreams in a treasure. I can't. I'm trying to turn the car out of this skid, and I'm doing the best I can. So let's talk a little bit about Dream confronting Desire. Because first of all, Desire, okay, here's my thing with Desire. I realize that Desire basically raped Unity, although we don't really talk about that as that, because in her dreams when she was experiencing it, it does seem that it was a very consensual thing. And we are endless. There are, ways to get inside the dream and live the experience inside the dream. And Lyta also conceived in a dream with consent. So we're just going to let that float, right? We're just going to let that
I think
be
we
what it
should
is.
Take a moment, because I did say I think it's questionable consent, because anytime you are stripping someone under false pretenses, that is questionable consent. There's that, in romance, there's always I've lost my memory. I love her. I want to kiss her. But what if I'm married and have 16 children, or I'm a sniper? So, it's a thing. And so clearly, if you aren't being honest about yourself, then that's questionable.
If you lie, there is rape by deceit is actually becoming something. There are places that do have laws about that sort of thing, that if you are lying to someone and they would not have slept with you had they known the truth, that is a sexual violation, definitely.
Oh, this actually reminds me. So I was listening to a David Sedaris book, and I heard the one joke that this is really crude, but I've been telling it to everyone because it's amused me a lot. Can I say a dirty joke?
Oh, now after we've been opening trench coats and talking about incest, yes, of course.
Okay, so this ties into questionable consent. The joke is, what's the worst thing that you can hear while going down on Willie Nelson?
I don't know.
I'm not Willie Nelson. I love that joke.
That is questionable consent. Yes. So here we have steering out of the skid. Here we have back into dream and desire and what happened with Unity is that we do have, this is a world in which, we have a dream space that very much exists, there are real experiences happening there. And if desire, in the same way that Hector impregnated Lyta in the dreaming, if desire was in the dreaming with Unity and had consent in that space, but then she became pregnant in the real world, I still think, yeah, no, because she doesn't know that they are desire. She doesn't know that they are the endless. She doesn't know who this person is, and who desire has pretended to be is not who they fully are.
Also,
so consent is really impossible. So I just made my own argument that it is absolutely, yes.
Well, okay, so I think I'll give another argument for that, and then I'm going to give my gray area.
Yeah.
So because I think it falls into a gray area. There's another problem. Unity was last fully herself at age 12. And maybe she is maturing and living a life in the dreaming, but I'm a little confused about, has she, did she get sex counseling in the dreaming? Has she really grown up, or is she to some extent a 12-year-old? And
did she age in her dreams?
Yeah.
Right.
Did she gain the experiences she needed? Because even if she aged in her dreams, which I got the feeling she did, you think about in the real life analog is these people who are, kind of held prisoner somewhere, and they don't get the education or the exposure to the real world. And so they are not fully able to make informed decisions. So that's the real world analog. But here's where I think there should be, in fantasy and in writing, I think that there are these gray areas because there are different kinds of metaphors. And sometimes I think that to simply say, to say dubious consent or problematic is one thing, but to call everything rape sometimes feels to me like it takes away from the nuance of this, because it was a manipulation and a seduction. And I don't get the feeling that, desire by their very nature makes you want them. And so it's, so in that, and here again, if I go into the real world analog of that, it definitely does fall under rape if a person can't consent.
If a person is sleeping. If a person is sleeping,
but even if the person just isn't,
cannot consent,
cannot consent. I think that we are in a different realm where there's an alternate reality here. And the same with Hector. I don't think Hector knew that he could, dream impregnate Lyta.
No, but that was also very consensual, and would have been in the real world if Hector was around.
It was a folie à deux. It was that whole idea of these two people had created this mad alternate reality that they were going to live in together.
Right.
The thing is, desire is not a moral person. So I think last week I did talk a little bit about that whole Ted Lasso episode where really, for him to be a good lover, I thought he needed to have a little more connection. Why have I lost the ability to say the word connection? Connection with his own desire. And desire is not by its nature moral or, generous. That stuff can attend it. But there's something a little amoral and grasping and refusing to
ravenous.
Yes, and refusing to accept boundaries. So it makes sense that our desire of the endless should not be nice.
Right. Our desire of the endless should not be nice. Yes. But textually, I feel like there's an acknowledgement there that I'm looking for, just to make sure that I'm not crazy. At the same time, Dream does go to take a chunk out of Desire's beautifully cat-tailed ass. Like, Dream goes in there and Dream is like, I'm not putting up with any of your bullshit. And one of the things that I really like, especially as you talk about Desire being the place where rules don't exist, right? There are no rules, right? You're playing by Desire's game. And when you're in Desire's game, you do what Desire wants. Now, we have Dream, who we see and has gotten into trouble, giving in to Desire before, although we'll get into that in a little more detail as we move forward in the story. And so there's this one point, though, with Corinthian where Dream says, if I didn't follow my rules, this whole experience would consume me. Like, I would be consumed by that, right? The way that you are consumed by desire. So I find it really interesting that Dream is like, me, death, destiny will kick your ass, Yes. And Desire's like, gonna be what it's gonna be, cupcake, Like, Desire does not care about consequence. Desire is all about doing what you want in that moment, which I think is so interesting. And those rules, I think, like, the next thing, of course, that we want to see is Dream giving into Desire again and seeing how maybe he can balance between his very, very strict rules and the desire.
And another thing that's interesting, I mean, I love all the different dreams. And when we look at Barbie and Ken's dream, I think really the greater transgression with Ken isn't that he has an unfaithful dream in which, this woman's going down on him in the car. But I mean, first of all, the banality and the and just the boringness of his dream world as compared to hers. And then also, if you've ever read John Irving or Neil Gaiman, American Gods, you know why. I mean, especially if the car is moving, that is a bad idea.
That is a bad idea. The World According to Garp. Yeah, I haven't thought about that in a really long time. I read that way too young. But anyway,
I think we're going to have to put a label on this podcast.
We may have to. We're going into all of these different areas. But see, that's the thing. It's 10 podcasts in a trench coat right now because we're hopping around from all of these different ideas. So back to Dream and Desire. Like, I really liked that. I liked that Dream has those rules, and then of course we see the character arc of Dream at the end where he is starting to bend some of his rules, that a nightmare must always be a nightmare. And then that's when he frees Galt, which, not to, give away my hand or anything. Clearly, I've been waiting to talk about this from the beginning. I loved it so much that when Galt becomes this Dream and we see her truly becoming herself, it's just so wonderful. But it happens because Dream is able to drop those rules.
Yeah, fine. Where's Gregory? Where's Gregory?
Where is Gregory?
He was a nightmare. He was a nightmare that became a dream. He gets, sauced in the first episode.
Yeah,
come on. I mean, do we have to have Broken Face Crockery Man come before Gregory?
I don't know. Maybe Broken Face Crockery Man is the next evolution of Gregory.
There. That's as bad as when the beast becomes some, pasty-faced prince.
I know, really. Who needs that, right? All right. So one other thing, though, that kind of threw me off, and this is just a brief moment, because I'm wondering if maybe I'm missing something. But did it seem weird to you that, in the hospital with Lyda, we've got this new baby, Rose is holding the baby, everybody there is happy, and Jed quotes the Corinthian.
I loved it because I don't think the Corinthian ever did anything bad to Jed. In fact, he rescued him. And I think that the most interesting villains aren't entirely wrong or mistaken. And I love the fact that the Corinthian says true things. And, it's I love that people use yes, I think people tend to use your full name when you're in the most trouble. But yeah,
That's very true. That's very true. Well, here's the thing. Yes, one of the things I love about the Corinthian is that he does say true things. And yes, you can argue that he did not harm Jed or Rose. So there is that. However, Jed, this poor traumatized kid, did witness the Corinthian very much unaliving someone, in progress. And I just don't know, the heartwarming quoting of the Corinthian in this moment felt so tonally weird to me. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm saying maybe I don't get it. Why? Because it's obviously clearly a clear choice, but I think I'm missing why that works.
I think it works because it is a little acknowledgement of the dark within the light. That is, that even in light moments, we need to sometimes have that little acknowledgement of the dark and the truth that the dark provides. And I think Jed's not as damaged psychologically as he should have been because Galt preserved him. He was a hero in his dreams and he had great agency in his dreams. And when your dreams are that vivid and productive, it kept a lot of his psyche intact, I think.
I love that. I love that read. I'm still not sure about that line being used is so in this happy family moment, but you know what? One of these days I'll watch it and maybe I'll get it. Maybe I'll understand it then. The other thing, can we talk for a minute about Gwendolyn Christie killing it as Lucifer in the end?
And is she not in some ways like a dark, satanic Doris Day?
Oh my God. She's amazing. I love everything about her. I love the little curls of hair going in two opposite directions on her forehead. I love Mazikeen in there. Mazikeen is amazing. The whole we are going to, fuck everyone up. Lucifer is mad at God. Lucifer is mad at Dream. Gonna use one stone to just knock them all down. And I love the promise of season 2. As of this recording, we have not gotten a season 2 announcement, but I feel like this is a coda. This is a clear nod to where we're going with the story next. And it's this wonderful, how does Gwendolyn Christie smile and seethe at the same time in such a beautiful way that doesn't feel like she's pulling in two different directions? I mean, it's just amazing.
Yes, and it's because I'm saying the Doris Day thing because Doris Day was this blonde, wholesome, charismatic actor, and I think Gwendolyn Christie is as well. There's this sort of, sturdiness to her. And my dogs are tossing and turning like demons in the pit. But at the same time, she absolutely delivers sinister.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's a wonderful note on which to end the season. At least this part of the season, we're going to get a third, 2 more codas coming in, or short stories that we're going to be spending some time with as we go into next week with Dream of a Thousand Cats and Calliope. But I think that's a good note to end this particular story on. It's a good note to end this block on so that you can go and attend to your dogs, and we'll be back in a minute with Lucien's Library. If you're enjoying Endless, a Sandman podcast, then you should know that it is only through our Patreon supporters that we are able to produce this content for you. So we'd like to take this moment to thank everyone who supports us at patreon.com/Chipperish.
This episode of Endless was brought to you by the Chipperish patrons who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. Thank you to our power producers, Alice, Christina, Erica, Jane, Kevin, Kristen, Michael, Rose, Sarah, Shelley, Stephania, and Stephanie.
All Chipperish supporters get access to the Chipperish Discord chat, where you can pop in, meet other Sandman fans, and chat with the Chipperish creators. And at $10 a month and up, you can even attend live tapings for some of our shows.
Thank you to our intrepid editor, Jack Cram, whose time and skill is paid for through your support. If you'd like to support Endless and Chipperish Media, please visit patreon.com/Chipperish and support us today. Okay, I have taken my dogs outside so that we can enter Lucien's Library.
Oh my God, I love it so much. This, of course, Lucien's Library is where we have themes, behind the scenes stuff, and possibly light spoilers. So, be careful as you wander through and listen to us read the spines of the books here. I'm just walking with a metaphor. You go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is horror heat levels, because I was watching this and at the same time I made the mistake of giving in to my curiosity and watching the beginning of the Netflix Dahmer series, which is very well done.
Oh, yeah.
And just it was a little too disturbing for where I'm at right now. But it got me thinking about horror, and if horror were like salsa, how I could describe heat levels. And I think that for me, this is my own personal salsa horror rating. When horror is mild, only the bad get killed. And it can be as gory and as dark as you like. But as long as only the bad are killed, it's still a pretty mild flavor. And even kids like us, that kind of horror. Horror medium is where the bad and also some good people, but you don't know them well. That's medium. And I can do a lot of horror medium and mild. Hot horror is good people that fictionally die. You've spent some time with them. You care about them. And then we get into the extra hot, where your POV character dies a true death, meaning they don't then just reappear strolling around some alternate reality. They're
wandering
they're
through the dreaming, picking flowers. Yes.
And, by that criteria, which I've just made up, this is definitely horror, mild to medium. And I was thinking about that because you don't think of serial killer horror as being mild to medium.
Right.
And I think that, it, in a way, just the fact of it being serial killers makes it hotter, because every horror is a response to what people found awful, and to express the darkness of a time. And I think horror began to get, I think, realer after World War I. You had a lot of a response to all of this incredible death. And then there was this whole resurgence of horror after World War II and the atomic bomb, so we had all of these different metaphors going. Serial killers was, I would say, a big horror theme in the 80s. It was also a time when there were more serial killings. I'm not sure why there are fewer serial killings now, except maybe I've heard it, because I did a little digging around, and maybe because of social media and the fact that it's harder to disappear. I think that, there was this case in Poughkeepsie where somebody kept, this is a complete side story, but somebody was killing people and walling them up in the walls of the house.
Yikes.
And my daughter, this was in Poughkeepsie, my daughter went to school with someone who ended up living in that house. And
damn.
Yeah, you'd think that they would have just gotten rid of that house. And it was funny because Ellie didn't want to go to that house, and the girl couldn't come to Ellie's house because she was allergic to cats. So they could only hang out at school. But anyway, there seem to be fewer cases like that. And I think it's because when people go missing, they are more, easily tracked.
Yeah.
But as a monster theme, I think that we're coming back to serial killers right now. And there's some way in which this is a horrible time in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And serial killers as monsters, fictional monsters, feel very real. There isn't that patina of the supernatural taking them away from making us feel safe, that there aren't really monsters of this sort. And in this sense, just having the Corinthian feels like a balm, feels easier, because, so the reason we have serial killers is because we have this rogue nightmare. The reason that we have...
who inspired them all.
Yes. And so then we get the lift at the end of Dream giving a punishment that really feels like a fitting punishment. Nothing can bring back the victims, but whereas I started to watch Dahmer and I thought, I know this story. I can't see it dramatized because it's not the goriness that gets to me, because I can handle a lot of body horror. Mm-hmm. It's the moral outrage that you feel that there's no way that he can really pay for those crimes.
You can't. There's nothing you can do unless there was something where, where the vengeance that we go after would bring back the victims or would untraumatize the victims. All of those things cannot be undone. I love the punishment that Dream gives them because it does feel so apt and so appropriate, and we see, like the woman, the good doctor, calling the police and turning herself in. We see the other guy, I can't remember which serial killer it was, actually like shoot himself, in his car. We see them, we hear, Dream saying, you are going to understand, you are going to know what you've done, you are going to feel the pain and the grief from the families of your victims who will never be able to see their loved ones again. You're going to feel all of that. And that, I think, is so incredibly poetic and absolutely appropriate. And one of those things, too, that, like, if you've ever been the victim of anything, God willing, and the creek don't rise, none of us will be victim of anything that terrible or anybody
Spit
that
three times over my left shoulder.
Spit 3 times over the left shoulder. But when you have been, like, deeply harmed by someone, the idea that they could understand what they've done, but the people who do like really deep, terrible harm are not the kind of people who can understand what they're doing or care. So there is something about this idea of somebody being able to, like, I had a book once where I had like a sociopathic killer, and the way that my my lead character, beat them was by magically returning their empathy to them. And to see somebody who is sociopathic like that, having that empathy returned to them and what it would do to them, that to me was a lot of fun to write, because it felt like this is what you need, that you can never get from somebody who does these truly terrible things. Because if they had that capability within them, they wouldn't do those things, So I think that it's a really interesting kind of thing to talk about these. I love, Whitney's theory of horror, like, coming up here, the hot and the medium. To me, like, the body horror, like, I'm not good with body horror. I don't like seeing people hurt in any circumstances, whether I know them or not. But it is. There is something about the rehumanizing, and again, like I didn't think about this clearly before I started. This isn't in my notes. All of the becoming and the rebecoming and the reintegration of self that we're seeing thematically run through all of these stories. Here we are with all of these serial killers who, if you think about it in terms of this nightmare came down when the dreaming was all a mess, and infected all of these people, and they did these things that they would not have done, and they become victims as well. Like, everybody's a victim here, everybody is. And for them to realize what they've done and kind of have to come to grips with that, it's a really powerful story. It's like Angel on Buffy, it's a really powerful story. And part of us wants that. We want to see somebody who understands what they've done.
Yes. And for me, even though, as you say, socks on an octopus or 10 cats in 5 cats in a trench coat, because there's just such a strong, visceral, emotional core to this, I think it really works well for me. And I would say that, romance and horror are both really visceral genres. They only work if they grab you by the kishkas. And I think this works in a way both as horror and as romance because it takes us to dark places. We get to see some images that really are horrific, including someone who seems to be operated on without anesthesia, including,
while they're alive, yes.
Yeah, body, that's vivisection, bodysuit stuff. But because you get real uplift at the end, no matter, if the serial killer does up the spice level of the horror, not the sexy spice, but the burning sensation spice. This is the uplift is you get a mango lassi, to soothe your tongue and ease the burn and make you feel afterwards that all is well in your stomach.
Well, absolutely. And that is, an interesting metaphor that I can't take anywhere, but what I am going to do is go into the purpose of nightmares. Dream says that he made the Corinthian to be a dark mirror made to reflect everything humanity will not confront. That this is the purpose of nightmares. And instead, the Corinthian goes in and infects humanity with what he is, right? With the way that he was made, that he is a nightmare made wrong. And when Dream isn't there to keep him in line, he goes out into the world and just, wreaks all sort of havoc. And so I found this such an interesting idea that, we have a nightmare, we wake up and we're horrified and we're scared or we're sad or whatever, feeling all of those feelings in the middle of the night. It's truly, truly terrible. But a lot of times, I think it is. It's unconfronted fear. That ends up being personified in some kind of nightmare, some kind of situation, some kind of monster, right? I mean, all of our monsters in our storytelling, they're all metaphor. They're all about the fears that we have difficulty confronting.
Oh, God. And as you're talking, I'm thinking maybe because the Corinthian didn't give nightmares to these serial killers, he inspired them to become like nightmares. Maybe he was meant to help prevent them acting this out by letting them experience it in their dreams.
Confront the darkness in the dreams, right? That this is the purpose of, this is why he's creating nightmares. This is why these nightmares need to exist, And here we have two nightmares. We have Galt, who is not aligned with that purpose, that she was assigned. And then we have Corinthian, who is aligned, with the actions that he's supposed to do, but again, not aligned with the purpose. So we see kind of these two nightmares reflecting again on each other.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I want to also talk about a place where I think there was a lack of darkness that I wanted to see.
Yes.
So I was thinking about how in so many ways the serial killer convention is like a pun, standing in for writers and conventions.
Yes.
And as if serial killers are dark mirrors of writers in this storyline. So you get all of, there's so many ways in which as I was joking in the summary, you work alone, you don't get recognition, there's competitiveness, there's the feeling that, why am I not a bigger name? Or, oh God, I'll never be as efficient at taking out, eyeballs as, and for eyeballs read, I don't know, extraneous scenes. But Rose is an aspiring writer, and she doesn't seem to have any of the weird mixture of hubris and insecurity that I think most writers I know possess. I don't know how to put this, but there's a way in which writers are not very nice people. They are often thinking to themselves,
how very dare you? Yes.
Well, there's a side of us that isn't nice because, we could be having, you could be saying, oh my God, I can't believe what happened. A tree fell on my house and I've lost everything. And I'm thinking, I can use this. And, and we all have this element that even when, there's a little part of the brain that sits apart and says, this is awful. Oh God, this is a terrible fight. I'll use this. And, we're part.
I got the people in the walls house cranking in the back of my brain as we speak.
Exactly. Where, there's a scavenger-ishness. And, it's true, obviously, of horror and thriller writing, but to some extent, all writing, domestic scenes of dismay. And, there isn't any good writing without both observing from life and borrowing from it. And I just, Rose is a little bland on this. You know that she wants to write, and writing there seems to be a stand-in for, I want to do something creative. But I would have loved a moment of her, thinking, serial killers, I can use this. And I guess
I don't think, do we get the sense, do we know that she's a writer before she writes this book?
Oh,
okay,
she tells
I missed
Hal
that entirely.
Yeah, she tells Hal, and Hal is saying, his love for Broadway is like her desire to write. And she does turn this into a story. Had there been enough space, I would have liked to have seen more of the writer in Rose. More of that little, she just seemed very young and not, she does have her arc, but I didn't get enough of a sense of what it would be like to experience anything filtered through her consciousness. If she'd had clever quips or little observations or, so that was a little bit missing for me.
Well, I love that too, because we have this whole thing, and I think we hit it harder in the comics than we do in the TV series. But this idea that the Morpheus, King of Dreams, is actually King of Stories. It's the storytelling. And so you have Rose as a vortex, right? She would also be then a storyteller. And we see her put up walls and break down walls between other people's stories, but we don't see her telling their stories or controlling their stories. And I think that in the dream space, had she been doing that, we would have seen her writing evolve, but again, it's such a time. There's 10 cats in a trench coat. There's so much stuff going on here already. There was barely enough real estate for the stuff that we did. Yeah, that would have been kind of awesome, but at the same time, it's okay. It's okay. There was definitely enough packed into this story. And now moving forward, I had a whole bunch of little random thoughts. Are you reading my random thoughts? Okay. So I have a part of the script that I usually just stick little random thoughts in, and I don't. Sometimes I'll bring them in or I'll pull them in. But this, I didn't pull, I think, any of these in. But basically, a couple of things. So Dream says, I brought you into this world to serve humanity, not to feed upon it. And for some reason, even though it's not within Dream's character, and I'm not actually suggesting, I think that they did it right. I felt like in that moment, I wanted some kind of nickname there, like Mouth Eyes or Toothface, but I couldn't think of something really good for the Corinthian.
Four teeth.
14. I like it. Also, we see the Corinthian kind of tearing up there a little bit. Now, is that tears or is that drool? Where do we draw the line between the biology of the teeth eyes?
I just want to say that the way you wrote it in your notes would be just what is the sound of one hand clapping? When the Corinthian cries, is it just drooling?
Is it just drooling? It's really a philosophical question. I think that it doesn't need an answer so much as everybody just needs to sit with that question for a little while and sort of ponder it. I like this. Without my rules, humanity would be consumed. And then, Corinthians says, or you might actually feel something. And the thing that I like is how that speaks to Dream's arc of being able to feel, of being able to truly connect. I mean, we've seen this entire season. Death has been like, hey, you're not connected with people. Come with me while people die and let's chat about it, or, hey, you're not connecting with people. Come with me into this medieval tavern and let's have a beer about it, So I really like that we are keeping a, strong tooth eye on Dream's character arc and how he's moving into this space where he can be more connected. And, I have to say, the look on Lucien's face when Unity says the father of her baby was a golden-eyed man. Can we just talk about Lucien for a little bit? Because, oh my God, Dream makes the connection and Lucien's like, yeah, I was there 20 minutes ago.
The look on her face is a Tanya Tucker song.
Oh my God. It's her patience with the shenanigans and the endless is like chef's kiss perfect. Like
Absolutely.
Lucienne is one of my favorite things. But now here we are at the part of the podcast where we talk about what is our favorite part of this episode. So Alisa, what is your favorite part of Lost Hearts?
All right. I had a bunch. I had 2 runners up and a winner. All right. Second runner up, Unity and Lucienne in the library. Really enjoyable. I loved that Unity stays old. In the comic, she reverts to her younger state. So I love that she's old and gets her moment. I do wish she'd gotten a little more glammed up for her big confrontation with Morpheus. But it is her dream. But I love that. Okay. First runner up, Barbie and Martin Tenbones, with Barbie spotting Ken's stupid hot girl giving head in a car dream. And then my winner, I just loved Zelda saving Chantal, or maybe it was Chantal saving Zelda. Which is the little girl?
Yeah. I don't know.
I got confused.
I think Zelda's the little girl.
Well,
I'm not sure. Yeah.
All I know is I love the scene. I love the idea that they so understood each other that one could get the other out of a stuck place. There is no greater gift of friendship, either to someone psychologically or in a story, to get them out of a stuck place.
Oh, can I also throw in, like, can I have a runner-up, which is that a real spider? Used to be.
I love it. By the way,
it's so great.
My daughter just keeps sending me videos of like her shooing tarantulas out of her Earthship in New Mexico.
Oh my God!
Because it's I think like tarantula mating season.
Well, that's horrifying. So let's move on. Okay, so for anybody who had Lani Talks About Galt 5 times in a single podcast on their bingo card, go ahead and get your markers out, because my favorite part, of course, is Galt becoming the dream that she was always meant to be. There is nothing in this world as beautiful as Galt realizing herself, and I'm gonna go and watch that scene on repeat over and over and over again, because it is unbelievably beautiful.
You've got a Galt crush. If you enjoyed this insane conversation and would like to join in, connect with the show on Twitter. Follow @Chipperish and use the hashtag #EndlessPodcast, or send your comments or questions to endless@chipperish.com.
This episode of Endless was edited by Chipperish content editor Jack Cram. Jack, you're in charge now. You're the Vortex. We'll be back next time with Dream of the Thousand Cats / Calliope, episode 11 of Netflix's The Sandman Season 1. Until then, next time I make you, you will not be so flawed and petty, little dream.